Talk platform.
With me, Jones. Hope you're well and safe. Always a pleasure to come your way. Here's what's coming up on today's show. Later on the show, we'll be looking at an interview that I did with Grammy Award-winning reggae band Morgan Heritage. They talk about up-and-coming new album which features many African artists. Plus, what is the US and Russia's role in the conflict in Sudan? That's what's coming up on the show. But we begin the show with the suspension of Diane Abbott from the Labour Party. Diane Abbott wrote a letter to the Observer. In the letter, she stated that Jewish, Irish, and traveller communities have experienced prejudice, but added, this is similar to racism, and the two words are often used as if they are interchangeable. Ms. Abbott added, it is true that many types of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism. So that was the comment Diane Abbott made. And of course, there was a backlash. And if you've been following British politics when it comes to the Conservative Labour Party, the issue with anti-Semitism has really troubled the Labour Party. The leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, had a few words to say about this statement from Diane Abbott. Let's take a quick listen to what Sir Keir Starmer had to say.
What she wrote yesterday, I utterly condemn. And I said we would tear out anti-Semitism by its roots. I meant it, and that's why we acted so swiftly yesterday. I think it's a mark of how far the Labour Party has changed, that we acted so swiftly and that we take it so seriously. But I condemn what she said. In my view, what she said was to be condemned. It was anti-Semitic. It's absolutely right that we acted as swiftly as we did. That's the change that you've seen in the Labour Party. But do I condemn what she said? I absolutely condemn what she said. Do I want to show the Labour Party takes this seriously and acts very quickly? Yes, I do, and that's why we acted as swiftly as we did yesterday.
So if you say you've got a zero-tolerance approach to all of this, and you've just said it is anti-Semitic, surely she cannot stand as a Labour candidate at the next election?
Well, as you know, there's an investigation going on at the moment.
What reason,
there's an investigation going on at the moment. That's the right thing. The whip has been suspended. That was done very swiftly, and I have condemned what she said, along with many other people.
Well, what's the purpose of the investigation? I mean, you've read a word, you've judged it as anti-Semitic. What's this investigation to find out she's apologised? Surely she cannot stand as a Labour candidate if you've got a genuine zero-tolerance approach.
I think everybody understands that there has to be an investigation in every case, and nobody has said to me there shouldn't be an investigation. What they want to see is a Labour Party that demonstrates by its actions that it's changed, that it does have zero tolerance, and that's why we acted as quickly as we did yesterday. What she wrote yesterday, I utterly condemn, and I said we would tear out anti-Semitism by its roots. I meant it, and that's why we acted so swiftly yesterday. I think it's a mark of how far the Labour Party has changed, that we acted so swiftly and that we take it so seriously. But I condemn what she said. In my view, what she said was to be condemned. It was anti-Semitic. It's absolutely right that we acted as swiftly as we did. That's the change that you've seen in the Labour Party. But do I condemn what she said? I absolutely condemn what she said. Do I want to show the Labour Party takes this seriously and acts very quickly? Yes, I do, and that's why we acted as swiftly as we did yesterday.
So if you say you've got a zero-tolerance approach to all of this, and you've just said it is anti-Semitic. Surely she cannot stand as a Labour candidate at the next election.
Well, as you know, there's an investigation going on at the moment.
What reason,
There's an investigation going on at the moment. That's the right thing. The whip has been suspended. That was done very, very swiftly, and I have condemned what she said, along with many other people.
Well, what's the purpose of the investigation? I mean, you've read her words, you've judged it as anti-Semitic. What's this investigation to find out she's apologised? Surely she cannot stand as a Labour candidate if you've got a genuine zero-tolerance approach.
I think everybody understands that there has to be an investigation in every case, and nobody has said to me there shouldn't be an investigation. What they want to see is a Labour Party that demonstrates by its actions that it's changed, that it does have zero tolerance, and that's why we acted as quickly as we did yesterday.
So that was the opposition leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Now, on the show today to help us to discuss today's topic is Julius Boluto, a journalist, a broadcaster, and also editor of Informer East Africa. Julius, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Always a pleasure, John.
There's never a dull moment in politics, but it looks as if this time, I think probably the first question will be your reaction to the statement and also Labour's decision to suspend or remove the whip from Diane Abbott.
On one account, I think Britain has become a bit more sensitive to what people can say using their democratic right for freedom of expression. And it looks like politically they are like those sensitive grounds on which when you say anything is being interpreted in a very serious way. Look at the example of Lineker and the controversy touching on BBC. Seriously, what he compared what's happening with Hitler's time, perhaps then it would be like, it would have been an issue because it's a personal expression of opinion. Same thing with Diana Abbott. When she said what she said, of course, she didn't feel like it was the wrong thing to say. But when you look into the political sensitivities of this country right now where we are, and then definitely there was a backlash and I saw her having to withdraw what she had said. Now, to be kicked out of the party is a bit more extreme. But watching this is a bit more like watching what the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, went through. On one account, I was like, what has he done wrong? And number two, managing the racism issues within the party. Then again, you are like, was it really his fault or was it not his fault? Or did they want him to sack people for them to see he was serious enough or not? So I think Labour Party right now, under Keir Starmer, definitely, if they're not careful, they are losing very powerful people politically who could actually determine the outcome of any election when that comes.
It's about the anti-Semitism. And of course, Labour, I think Sir Keir Starmer is trying to distance himself from the previous leader, Jeremy Corbyn. And he came out, of course, we know that he's come out to say that the Labour Party now, zero tolerance for any anti-Semitic views. Do you think that this is more or less a political witch hunt due to the fact that Miss Abbott was actually a close ally to Jeremy Corbyn, who has also been suspended from for standing for the Labour Party?
There could be a link to that. And when you look at the two characters, Jeremy Corbyn and Abbott, definitely they are forthright. When they speak, they say what they mean, and they don't mince their words. And sometimes you may say pretty much political, honest people in terms of what they can say and in a different way, the way they use their words. Both of them also express themselves in a way that is controversial, could be seen as controversial, but at the same time, when you look into the dynamics of Labour Party and the standing of the party, probably, and also the people involved, especially when you touch on the Jewish community, it started with Jeremy Corbyn, and now it's Diana Abbott. Like, when it comes to that community, community is a no-go area. Is that how it should really be handled? I'll say no to that, because there are many other areas of sensitivities. The racism, don't say if you can, it can be okay to talk about black people going through racial moment. It's like, okay, you can talk about it. When it comes to another particular community, it's a no-go area. I think there should be parity when we see the handling of what people can say and what they cannot say.
I mean, within the black community, you know, when we do our shows, you tend to realize that people actually feel as though that when it comes to, especially the Jewish community, that they more or less are protected than, you know, the black community. And in a way, some will argue that the Labour Party's decision more or less proves what the black community especially believe what is happening.
It's definitely so, because we've never seen Labour Party come out to defend some standpoints when it comes to racism affecting black people. They're like, you can talk about anything. It's not a big deal. You can talk about even racism affecting black people in the UK. Things happen. You see, it was racial attack, but you know, it's like, okay to talk about these things. Look, we are coming from the remembrance of Stephen Lawrence after all those
30 years.
30 years, and the conversations were very straightforward. And why are we supposed to remember what happened? What lessons should we have learned from it? It was a kind of a normal talk, but it becomes like extreme sensitivity when it is like talking about Jewish community. You see, the thing is, let me say this in a very point-blank way. There are issues of heritage, okay?
Yes.
Colonization, colonialism is part of UK's heritage. It happened, and you can't sweep it under the carpet. And it's okay to talk about it. Oh, attacks by Hitler, they happened. It's part of the Jewish heritage. When you talk about what happened, it should be like, let's talk about these things. Let us be in learning from history so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again. I know sometimes when it comes to what people say or what people compare something with, some politician who wants to be seen as paragons of virtue, models of excellence, if I may use that phrase, they may quickly be willing to come across and show themselves as, we're the best, we're dealing with it better, we're protecting. But is it about protecting one community of the other people? No. Welcome to the UK. Let's talk about the extremists. Let's talk about the red next. Let's talk about members of BNP party. Let's talk about all these people. Let's talk about what is around. English Defence League. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about them. Let's learn. What are they on about? Until it comes a time, this country, you realize, when you protect one community, you didn't do anything useful for the country. No one is safe until we're all safe.
Are you surprised by the lack of politicians actually coming out in support of Diane Abbott?
I'm not surprised, because you see, the thing is, when it comes to parties and the whipping by the parties, definitely then it becomes a question of let me protect my interest, let me protect my seat, let me protect this. I don't want to attract controversy around me. But I want to say there should be political solidarity when it matters. You see, if, for example, political solidarity, if, for example, Lineker, what is said, it's a lot of money involved when you imagine how much money he gets paid.
Yeah.
What stopped Ian Wright, they do presentation at the same time, from saying, it's my opportunity to jump in and get those millions. Money has remembered me. He could have done that, but he said, I'm not going to replace him. I'm not going to stand in for him. I stand with him.
Well, if any politician does come out to support Diane Abbott, I guess presumably they'll be thinking that they'll also be dubbed as anti-Semitic.
Exactly. The conversation now changes, because now they want to protect their political interests and their political future, because they'll be seen as, anti-Semitic. But is it the case? Perhaps not, because to compare two groups of people or two events, it doesn't mean that you committed words and said this is a case.
I mean, speaking to people about this, especially again, with the Afro-Caribbean community in particular, some are really, really upset about this. And again, which I think we already touched on, this more or less proves the narrative that which a lot of the black communities believe anyway, that one group in particular is treated highly than other groups. But the argument is, away from the semantics, for the Jewish community in particular to be able to have a voice in the community, they're very influential. So one might ask, if that's the case, how come the black community as a people don't have a voice? Is it down to lack of influence at the source of power?
I just want to say, if you talk about influence, I don't think that is the issue per se, because when you talk about influence, I mean, we're in the UK, the Prime Minister is of Indian origin, and there's lots of people from Asian origin, extremely influential when it comes to the roles they played and where we are right now politically. So you just want to distance the influence from the protection. A group of people can be overprotected. Doesn't mean they're influential.
Yeah. Okay. Well, point well made. Keep your thoughts and comments coming in. We'll keep a close eye on this issue that has been dominating the news agenda. I want us to switch our focus to what's happening in Sudan. Intense clashes between Sudan's military and the country's main paramilitary forces has killed hundreds of people, and of course many countries are trying to evacuate their citizens right now as we speak in the country. But what's interesting is that there seems to be external forces or influence from external forces in what's happening in Sudan, the role of the US and the role of Russia. Julius, I mean, nobody wants Cold War across the continent of Africa. I mean, you've been on the show several times and we've spoken about the fact that there seems to be a split across the continent of Africa, with people siding, some countries siding with Russia, others siding with the West. I think the question is, one, is it true that the US and Russia have influence, or they have a role to play in what's happening currently in Sudan?
You see, when I do analysis on Sudan, it just pains me. We're talking about a country that has experienced some 17 coups. So they've never known any civilian form of leadership since they knew what freedom in essence should be like. Self-rule, what it should be like. They've never known that. 17 coups. And we quickly go back and see when Sudan became the focus of the US. That was just after, in 1998, when for the very first major terror attack in Kenya and Tanzania, simultaneous bombing of the American embassies in Nairobi and also Tanzania at the same time. That's a time now, although Osama bin Laden was a wonderful chap, being supported by the US, residing in the US, with all this wealth, having helped them before, to fight their enemies, now he became on focus. Apparently, he was supposed to be in Sudan, and that's the time.
Yes.
The time US was chasing Osama bin Laden, and that's the time when US blacklisted Sudan as supporter of terror. In fact, they imposed sanctions. But what's happening behind the scenes? What's happening behind the scenes, Jonas, is that there's a lot of wealth in Sudan. They have oil, they do gold mining, a lot of mineral stuff and all that. So when you look into that, apparently Russia was focused on the mining business with Sudan. Now, recent fallout, before even we go to where we are, where two generals are now fighting each other, just before that, do you know what's happening globally? You saw China going to rally some countries in the Middle East, coming together to ditch the dollar away.
Yes.
So whereby now future purchases between this bloc from Russia, China, and these Arabic countries, they are going to use Chinese currency to do that. And you see now dynamics change because dollar has been kicked out. And that immediately you see Sudan, the focus was not on any war coming. They were focused on coming together to discuss and in the end bring on board civilian
rule.
rulership.
Yes.
That's where we were. And remember in 2021, yeah, these two generals, they overthrew that government which included part of the civilian rulership after the revolution. But then they were like together now. How come now they are separated out of the blue and they start bombing each other like crazy? You see, this is where we are now. And right now we are talking, Russia had made commitments with Sudan, talking about how they are going to support Sudan, how Sudan is going to give them access to build their like military bases in Sudan, give them more access to Africa continent, give them access to the sea, in which case you may find they'll do quite a lot more. Immediately that's happening. And you see the influence of Russia ditching out the dollar, then you see war beginning to happen. Interesting times.
Interesting times indeed. But one will ask, where is the AU, the African Union? Because, you know, we've seen this happening, these proxy wars, we've seen it happening. History tells us what's happened, you know, even the Vietnam War. And these superpowers going at each other non-stop. Why? I think the question then is, how come African leaders cannot come together to find a way to prevent this from happening? I guess, you know, this will be one of the main questions that people will be asking.
The interesting thing is that I've argued many times, you know, since time immemorial, Africa would never be free until it stops being controlled, until the time comes where they stop calling out. See, the moment happening in one country in Africa, they are shouting, oh, we welcome international community. Why can't they stand on their feet? Why are they called leaders if they can't lead the continent? See, we have AU, Africa Union, we have IGAD, and of course I see, just not to take away credit, I've seen some president like William Ruto in Kenya, President William Ruto in Kenya calling upon IGAD to take measures to call for peace between the two generals, asking them to respect the agreement that was there before. But that's not good enough, Jonas. We need to understand one thing. Generals, when they start to fight, they don't understand any other language except the language of
soldiers.
War. Yeah, so we need to have Africa stand by force under the auspices of AU. So in a situation like this, it will be sent there right away. And if United Nations can also send their own peacekeepers, quickly unite and be the buffer zone to stop the war from carrying on. Because right now, the war in Sudan, as we speak, even of today, is taking a very bad, different dimension. I've seen foreigners being killed, and it's not pretty to watch. So, because you ask yourself, what have they done? They don't do politics there. They are not part of they are not supporting any camp, because these are two generals fighting each other. Rapid Support Forces and the army. Yeah. None of foreigners is like, we want this one to win. It's not beauty contest. You know what I mean? So why are they being killed? It's taking a very bad direction right now as we speak. And that's why Africa Union should have had a standby force. When a country, any country, immediately is about to experience instability, that standby force is sent to be the buffer zone to stop war from going on. Look at what happened in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with the M23. You saw when the East Africans sent that East Africa standby force, at least the M23 backed away, the government stopped, and talks about negotiation for peace started to happen at least. That's a very important thing to have.
I mean, you know, it has been reported that this differences between both camps escalated when one camp agreed for Russia to have its vessel on the on the Red Sea, to which some have also argued the U.S. actually deplored that and did not support the argument. Hence why this is going on. At some point, just as human beings, we must realize that what is happening now in the short term may look as if one person is going to win. In the long term, disastrous for the entire continent, that people are fleeing.
And definitely so. There is no winners in war. We all lose. Look, I just want to use the example of Syria. How many years of war? Yeah. And we have all these international Western countries bombing each other out there in the name of their killing terrorists. Let me just ask you a question. You came to London, you're somewhere on the air there. How do you pick the Al-Qaedas inside on the streets of London? They don't walk with labels which are written Al-Qaeda, whatever. So from the air, how can you know they're the ones to... it's just an excuse of superpowers outdoing each other on the ground of Syria. And if we are not careful, Sudan will be the same. Right now, there are several countries with interest in Sudan. Saudi Arabia has, United Arab Emirates have interest in Sudan. US has influence in Sudan because they don't want to see Russia gain a foothold there. Yeah. Russia has been doing business. Wagner, the most feared right now, feared militia, whatever, is pretty much fully operational on the ground. And in this conflict, they are seen as to be the ones supporting rapid forces, support forces, who are fighting with the army in Sudan. So when the war takes that dimension, and you may see, okay, if that is a feeling, if the Wagner are supporting rapid support forces, then US may say, let's support the army. So it becomes the war between Russia
and the US.
On the grounds of Sudan. So we want to say, get out of Sudan. It's an African country. Fight your wars away.
Well, the Sudanese armed forces are broadly loyal to General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the country's de facto ruler. While the paramilitaries of the Rapid Support Forces, a collection of militia, they follow General Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, also known as Hemedti. Hemedti, his name is, I think that's what he goes by. And we keep a close eye on this, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this here on Talk Africa. But swiftly, we must move on. Still talking about the main land, the homeland rather, I should say. Grammy Award winning band, reggae band, Morgan Heritage. I had the opportunity to speak to them. They have a new album coming out which features many African artists across the continent, from east to west to south, merging, fusion, the reggae sound and the Afrobeat. I spoke to them about the album and the impact of the reggae music across the continent of Africa, and more so, the importance of reaching out to the motherland. Let's take a quick listen to this. Family. So before we get into the new album and everything, just talk a bit about your background.
Well, Morgan Heritage is we were 5 brothers and sisters when we started out, people really started knowing about Morgan Heritage. Children of the legendary Denrai Morgan. And now it's 3 of us, myself, Peter, Mr. Mojo, and Gramps. And I mean, we've been doing music for 20 plus years now, from Don't Have to Dread to More Teachings to, all the way up to Strictly Roots, the album that we won the Grammy for in 2016. Yeah. And, there's so many work that's been done throughout the years. But if you, like you say, if you Google Morgan Heritage, you're going to see songs that you know these songs. So it's going to connect the dots.
What was interesting, just checking up about you guys, is you were brought up in Brooklyn.
Yeah, we were born in Brooklyn and educated in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, listening to your music, I would never think that you were born in Brooklyn, because I'm thinking, okay, it's a reggae sound and everything. And at what point did you make that transition to Jamaica?
Well, we traveled back and forth to Jamaica. Our parents went home every couple of years, and we traveled with them as children. And then in the early 90s, we made a trek to really perform as Morgan Heritage after years of development underneath our father's band, the Black Eagles, and different people he brought in. And that's when we got signed to MCA Records, straight off the Reggae Sunsplash stage, and we were off to the races from there.
What do you think has changed? Because you're talking about the fact that you were under the tutelage of your father compared to, what do you think has changed? You think that it's still important to have that tutelage, or?
Guidance is always going to be important. It doesn't matter how technology evolves. It's never going to matter. You're going to need guidance. The only thing that's going to change is the medium in which the guidance comes from. Because now the guidance is coming from the influence of outside sources outside of the home. So the kids are still getting guidance, because you come into this world knowing nothing. Everything you see is now going to shape and mold you into the person that you become.
There's one artist, I'm sure you heard his name, Fuse ODG. Mm-hmm. And a colleague of mine interviewed him. And Fuse is in the UK, and now he's in Ghana a lot. And whilst he was trying to break into the music industry, he said it was very difficult trying to break into the music industry here. Mm-hmm. So he had to go back to Ghana to connect with Ghana, and then his music imploded here. Mm-hmm. So he said a prophet is never welcomed in his hometown. So I just wanted to find out from you guys, were you accepted initially in Jamaica, or was it difficult?
For us, it's pretty much the same thing that happened with him. Like, we were born in New York, but we had to go back to Jamaica to make the noise, and then it came back to New York. You know what I'm saying? And then the world, after breaking out of Jamaica, then New York was like, oh, they're from New York, and so it's the same vibe. It's normal. Sometimes you have to go to a place where the people don't really celebrate you, and then the rest of the world will see it and then follow suit.
All right, now let's talk about this new album, The Homeland.
Yes.
And I just wanted to find the reason behind the title itself. What was the reason?
The title is inspired by us paying tribute or paying ode to our ancestors, which are African, and our parents, which are Jamaican. Still African, but by way of Jamaica. So the Homeland represents Jamaica and Africa for Morgan Heritage.
Yeah. I was listening to one of your tracks, and to be honest with you, as a fan, as I said, I wasn't surprised, because one of your tracks, Selah, and listening to the things you were saying was more or less the negative aspects of the motherland that's been portrayed in the Western media. Yes. So I don't know whether I'm right in trying to connect the title of this album. Trying to
100%.
Okay, so there you go. So
lies and propaganda, they speak of Africa. I tried from Nairobi to Addis Ababa and find the truth for myself. Wow, boy, the world is more beautiful than you know. From Cape Town to Accra to Lagos, so much beauty my eyes behold. So much in school they have never told us. Like how much slaves died on Gorée Island in Senegal, and how much never reached Caribbean islands. Why? The slave trade was wickeder than you know. I know they returned to Africa for the gold and diamonds. While they make it seem like the land is just full of poverty and hungry belly. What a terrible conspiracy. No, it's a season. There was the end of an era. No more we are right to the truth, oh yeah. I am as stronger than ever. You know, it's a season. There was the end of an era. No more we are right to the truth, oh yeah. I am as stronger than ever. I cry for Jamaica. It hurt my heart to see my people of Jamaica don't realize the reggae music is the savior, preserving the knowledge of our former selves. Check the youth them in a Gambia, never know. You would have been born and raised in a Jamaica too. Them love the culture.
So, then what was your first experience like when you actually touched the motherland?
Our first experience dates back a little right after we got signed to MCA Records, when that album Miracle was released. We were brought to the Ivory Coast by a friend of the family named Josie Torre, and you know, it wasn't because they knew our music. It was more of an experience type of trip and an introduction to the motherland, and it went really well, so well that 4 months later they invited us back. This time we brought our father because he was working on the estate that we just acquired in Jamaica and preparing to move back home. So we went back and he was received as a king in one of the villages there, and it really set the tone for us and opened our eyes to the possibilities that we discovered in Africa.
And again, from somebody, you know, living in the diaspora, of course I grew up in Ghana, so whatever is being portrayed or propagated by the West, I don't pay no much attention to. But it's almost as if this particular album, you're really hitting home.
Most definitely.
Because again, I think it is, if it's not Seller, it's probably the song title, the album title, Homeland,
Right.
where you were saying that they said there's nothing good in Africa, but guess what? America, China, and Europe, they're all in Africa.
Yes, I mean, it's a reality. Like, you know, you walk through the airports in Africa now, and like we went to Addis Ababa the other day, and you see the Amharic writing, the alphabet, and underneath that is Chinese.
Wow.
Now, why would they have Chinese writing where they say, you know, transfers or connections or passports they do? It's because of the amount of Chinese that are going there.
Yeah.
And we, the black people of the diaspora, it's like we have no interest to go there. While, like we said, Europe is in there, America is in there, China is in there, while they're telling us, the children of the diaspora, there's nothing good there. Or, like, you know, the propaganda they spread the news on Africa is nothing good there, so we shouldn't be looking there. While, then why are you there?
Yeah.
You know, but it's for us to just wise up and know, say, Africa is the future. So on the Homeland album, we have a song called Africa.
Yeah.
Africa is the future. You know, it's just simple reasons like that. Because I mean, you go to Ghana right now, Accra. You go to Nairobi, Kenya, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Johannesburg, South Africa. You know, Lagos, Nigeria. It's nothing short of what you can find here in the West.
I just wanted to touch on the spirituality aspect, because I think a lot of the time, us as Africans, we live in a secular world.
Yes.
Okay, and the free world. So each and every individual, you can choose whatever you want to believe in. But the spiritual aspect of connecting with the motherland is important to you guys.
Most definitely.
Absolutely. As children of the diaspora, when we visited Senegal for the first time by way of Lord Alajiman, who is on that song, Africa the Future, from a group called Dada J, he brought us to Gorée Island so we could understand the journey of the transatlantic slave. And upon going there, the mayor of Gorée Island, he put a task on us. He made us ambassadors to the diaspora and gave us a charge. This was 15 years ago, to go back to the diaspora and let them know that Africa awaits its creators, because they didn't take the weakest slaves from Africa.
I'll live down by the river, waiting for the good Lord to pass my way. Oh yeah, I'll live down by the river, singing songs of joy on this lovely day. Oh yeah, three singing birds told me, by sunrise he's always there in the morning.
Unbelievable. The album in itself encapsulates exactly what you're talking about. But what actually drove this this album to try to A, to connect with the motherland, and B, to use different types of producers? But I'll come to the production aspect very
Sounds
soon.
like Africa.
Yeah.
It's important for us because as Rastafarian, we always say back to Africa. You know, that's the nucleus of who we are as people in the West, you know, as a sect of black people. And, you know, when as I say, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end.
Yeah.
And, like, there's nothing new that you can discover in America or Jamaica or the Western world. But Africa is a new frontier, you know, and our ancestors were taken from Africa and slaves to build the Western world. Now, Africa's being built. We want to be a part of that too. You know what I'm saying? And we've done reggae music our whole career. We are a reggae band, that's not a secret. But within music, we want to do something that will leave a lasting legacy where people can say, you know, that bridge between the diaspora and Africa through music. It was started by Morgan Heritage.
Yeah.
Because greats from Africa have come to Jamaica and done reggae albums like Ayuso Endor,
Magic, Fashek,
Yeah.
you know, people
Alpha
like that.
Blondie,
Alpha Blonde, yeah.
Alpha Blondie. So we from Jamaica want to
Lucky
do
Dube.
the same.
Yeah.
Return to Africa and do music with Africans, African music, and of course incorporate the sounds of Jamaica, the sounds of the diaspora, reggae music and dancehall with that to show that we are one. You know, it's one blood, it's one people. So we don't want to the barriers and say, oh, this is East Africa music, this is West Africa. It's one people, Africans. Yes, you have Ghanaians, Nigerians, Kenyans, South Africans. Yes, we represent our countries, but at the end they are one bloodline.
I mean, it's interesting you say that because for me, reggae music, dancehall has always transcended. And everybody across the continent of Africa is somehow, some way influenced by it. And recently, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, there's been this discussion about the influence of dancehall, reggae, and, you know, on Afrobeats. And, you know, especially on social media.
Right.
And, I mean, rightly so. I know that Jamaicans are very passionate because it is their culture, it is their identity. And some might feel as though Afrobeats has kind of taken the shine of dancehall, taken elements of dancehall and run away with it.
Right.
And I want to hear your perspective.
Well, I mean, it's no different from when R&B did it. It's no different from when the Latin community did it with reggaeton music. So we understand who we are as creators and innovators. What I think is the sad part is that we're competing against each other as black people, you know, because if our counterparts can borrow it in America and make it their own, why can't our counterparts from the root, which is Africa, borrow it and make it their own? That's all Afrobeats did, and it's not just Jamaican music that influenced Afrobeats. Hip life influenced Afrobeats. Hip hop, R&B influenced Afrobeats. Afrobeat, created by Fela Kuti, influenced Afrobeats, right? So if we understand these things, we're not going to see competition, we're going to see elevation. And that's the reality of it.
This is one of the reasons why we're so passionate about the homeland. Because it's not just about one sound of Africa. You know, it's many sounds of Africa. From Tanzania you have
Bongo flavor.
Yeah.
South Africa, the new sound coming out, which it's new to the world, but it's not new to them. The Amapiano. Yes, Afrobeats, Nigeria. Eddie Kenzo just educated us on the music of Uganda, Kid and Daddy. You know, so there's many sounds of Africa, and now that Amapiano is making its way to the global stage, people are trying to say it's Afrobeats, and it's not, and it's unfair to the South Africans to be robbed of their identity. You know, the same way the Nigerians have been respected for their identity through Afrobeats, let the South Africans be respected for their identity of creating Amapiano. So this is part of the mission of Morgan Heritage.
Because then you're going to find that everyone is not getting to express themselves for who they are. We're going to be bundled into one big groups. The African music is Afrobeats, and that's not the case. So just like how, like you said in the conversations, Jamaicans is talking like they're the roots, and Afrobeats saying, yeah, you may be the root, but we got the shine now. What are you going to say now that you are an Afrobeat star doing Amapiano? Are you going to give credit to the music that you are now becoming successful with?
Interesting. Now, I know that you worked with Stonebwoy and Shatta Wale, both Ghanaian artists. And listening to the track with Shatta Wale, very different to that of Stonebwoy. And I just wanted to know the idea behind it.
There's no particular idea. It's just the song that they fit on. You know, when we did the song that Stonebwoy's on, we heard Stonebwoy on that song.
Okay.
You know, with Bounty Killer and Baby Sham.
Beyonce, Rihanna, Tiwa Savage, Steph London, Shakira. You make a man have to think twice. Take him approach and get all him words right. Can't step to you in just anyway. Can none they like you, none they like you, none they like you. Who they like you? Who they like you? Can't find none they like you. Stay up, 1 in a million. You're more than a beautiful face. 1 million miles away. 1 in a million. 1 in a million. 1 in a million.
1 in a million, so classy. I know what you do, you why yo, in fact. No mommy, no worry, I'm okay, understand. Say that me, will never let you go no matter what them young. No mommy, no worry, me and you, we go where one go do. Because if I like this, I go buy special moto. Physically, girl, you better than polo show. That's why nobody don't feel like you, better than you, girl, you better than you.
The song Ready, it is Jose Chameleon from Uganda with Morgan Heritage, RJ the DJ, which is the producer with Morgan Heritage from Tanzania, and we heard Shatta Wale on it.
I find it fascinating because, I mean, the one with Stonebwoy is actually, it's Afrobeats.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Afrobeats. And it was interesting to hear Bounty Killer, Baby Sham on there, and of course, yourself. And to me, you did it justice.
Thank you,
Say
sir.
you did it justice. Was it tricky? Because obviously you guys are the musicians.
No,
was it tricky or?
No, it wasn't. I mean, you gotta understand that musicians like Morgan Heritage, before we're just reggae artists, we're musicians. So we can relate to any type of music, and we grew up in America. So we listen to R&B, hip hop, rock music, you know, gospel music. So different genres of music is not strange to us. And you know, on past albums, Morgan Heritage, we've done R&B songs.
Yeah.
And no one made an issue of it, of a reggae band doing R&B. We have a song called Golden, that's an R&B song. You know, we have ballads that we've done throughout our careers. We've done folk songs. And no one said anything about, oh, Morgan Heritage doing something. But as we're doing our own black music from Africa, it's a big conversation.
I think for me, my interest is more to do with the process. Because you tend to realize when you listen to a lot of the Afrobeats stars, it's a vibe.
Yes.
It's not necessarily sitting down and thinking, cracking your brains.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
Is it the same thing?
Same thing. It's just like reggae.
Yeah.
And dancehall is a vibes. You know what I mean? You can't go to school to learn reggae music. Yeah, you can learn it technically, but the vibe is not going to be there if you not feel the vibe. And with Afrobeats, we feel the vibe because we love the music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like you said, the song with Stone is more an Afrobeat vibe, while the song with Shatta is more of a dancehall vibe.
Yeah.
But it's us, it's black people.
And then what is more reggae is Alpha Blondy.
Exactly.
How was it working with him?
Legendary. He's a joy to be around. If you ever spend time with Alpha, he's very funny. He's very, cheerful. He doesn't act his age, and I think it helps to preserve him. Because when you see how long he's been doing it, he told me his age the other day. We won't talk about it, but I was like, I should be calling you uncle, not big bro. Like, you're my senior by a lot. But that's how that goes to illustrate the youthfulness that he projects when you interact with him. And Capleton just cemented as the fireman the energy and the message in that song. So Alpha represents the ancient, we in the middle, and keep it on the fire. So that song, when we sent it to him, there was a lot going on in the world, as you can imagine, during the pandemic. And if you understand or translate Alpha Blondie's music, you know he's a true revolutionary.
Yes.
So he was like, yeah, let's go. You know what I mean? When he sent us the translation of his lyrics, I was like, yeah, that's right.
Now, I want to just talk a bit about ownership, because you said you started off signed to MCA.
Yes.
But, you won the Grammys,
Yes.
African Independent.
Yes.
So just talk a bit about the independent roots, because this day and age, a lot of people would rather, do their own thing. But you guys are pioneers.
So doing your own thing comes with its own unique challenges as being signed to a major, because as a major you tend to have to follow what they say because it's their financial support that you're going off of, unless you structure your deal the right way and are signed based on impact that you've made before being signed. Then you have a little bit more power and say and control over how things are done under that deal. But as an independent, without the financial resources, you can have great music from now until the end of time and people will never hear it. I think they said there's like 10 million new songs uploaded on Spotify every week. I maybe know 5, 10, if I'm lucky. You understand what I'm saying? And a lot of it is independent. So as an independent, I would highly recommend you understand the task ahead of you, and maybe before releasing the music, try to popularize it in different ways, whether on social media, whether hitting the streets, going out, performing, doing different things to make people aware of your music, so you can create some sort of momentum. So when you do finally release the music, you can sell at least 100 downloads and get 50,000 streams, because releasing a song and getting less than 1,000 streams, you're releasing it for yourself at that point. You're not releasing it to try and say, I want to create impact with my music. And those are the pros and the cons of, at least to us.
Yeah.
We were grateful to have amassed the experience that we had underneath MCA, VP Records. Thank them both for believing in Morgan Heritage and give us the opportunity. We learned a lot, and we used a lot of that to go into Strictly Roots, to be able to achieve the highest honor in music, twice on one album, and then again the album right after that. So it's been an interesting journey for us as independent recording executives, only because the landscape is changing so drastically over the last 10 years. Like every 2-3 years, you better come up with a new strategy, or what you're doing is old.
Wow. And for Afrobeats, which is relatively new, you did make mention of the likes of Fela Kuti and so on, but this genre is just growing and growing. And again, it's all about ownership.
Yes.
You don't want a genre, a multi-billion genre, where the creators, originators don't really benefit us.
Right.
And you get the men in suits. It's funny I'm wearing a suit today. But the men in suits are actually the ones benefit. How do you think, with your experience, how do you think, especially Afrobeats, the stakeholders can actually prevent this, or at least find a way to mitigate it?
They have to just learn from those from the past. It's like hip-hop music. Like the creators of hip-hop music, the originators of it. What people are making out of hip-hop music today, they didn't see that.
Yeah.
But they were the ones that created it and laid the foundation, and that solid foundation that hip-hop music is now a musical empire today. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry every year. And when you do your research and understand how music is made, who made the music, and who's benefiting from it today, you can learn from that, and hopefully we can set up better business structures for ourselves as creators of a sound in the modern day, where we and our children and children's children can benefit from it in the future instead of someone else.
Okay, and where can people access the new album?
On your favorite DSP, just type in Morgan Heritage. It'll pop up. The Homeland has the latest release. Follow us on social media at Morgan Heritage. The link is in the bio, or go to the hub, morganheritagemusic.com.
Well,
You will find out.
it's been a pleasure having you guys on the show. Thank you very much for coming on the
Appreciate
show.
you, brother.
All right, Jones, nice to meet you.
So that was an interview there with Morgan Heritage. Hopefully you enjoyed it, because I certainly did. We've got a few messages on our Facebook page from Joyce. I'll just read a couple of the text messages that Joyce sent. This is to do with the US and Russia's involvement in the conflict in Sudan, where Joyce is saying, because we're not united as a people, why are we complaining? We tend to do worse things to ourselves. How many black people in Labour Party? This is to do with the suspension of Diane Abbott. Joyce is saying, how many people in Labour Party have gone to protest in Labour Party headquarters? She then goes on to say, I disagree with your guest. Africa will be free. The next generation are very serious. So thank you very much for sending your text messages. Unfortunately, we're done for another day, but all being well, we'll be back here, same place, same time next week. Until then, it's goodbye from us.